Good morning, everyone. This is the Policy and Resources Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, the 25th of July 2024, and we're at the Severn Park Training Centre. So I'm opening this meeting briefly just to explain that at the Avon Fire Authority Annual General Meeting on the 12th of June this year, Councillor Ben Nutman was voted as Chair of the Fire Authority. He will therefore, in accordance with the terms of reference for the Policy and Resources Committee, automatically become the chair of this meeting. So that's why we don't have to have a vote on that today. So with that said, I'll hand over to my right to Councillor Nutman.
Thank you, Madam. Okay, so welcome, members. The first item is the election of the Vice Chair of the Policy and Resources Committee. So I believe Councillor Hayward's going to propose Councillor Thomas. Yeah. I'll second that.
Can I just explain, the reason Councillor Thomas isn't in the room is he's had to go to a funeral, so he wanted to be here today, so it's just a bit unusual to vote for someone who's not in the room. He sends his apologies.
And obviously we wish Councillor Thomas all the best for today. Okay. So any votes against? Any abstentions? Votes for? It's carried. Okay, item 2, apologies for absence. I've got Councillors Hardy, Murphy, Payne, Ralston, Thomas.
We're also missing Councillor Moss, and I think Councillor Reinhardt has told us he's going to be a little bit late.
Okay, so item 3, which is the emergency evacuation procedure, which I'll pass over to the Chief Fire Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. There is no, wish of the day, there is no planned fire alarm for today, so if it does go off, it will be an actual event. If you can please exit the room through the two exit doors and down through the central corridor and congregate in the rear car park. If that's not accessible, there are 2 further exits either side of the corridor, which will lead you to the front car park and congregate there for a roll call.
As always, if there is an actual fire, we're in a pretty good place and in good hands. So, okay, so 4 declarations of interest, none have been advised. In the room? No. 5 public access, none received. 6 Chair's business, so I'd just like to welcome everyone to the meeting today. To confirm that the committee meeting is being held at Severn Park Training Centre. We are recording this meeting for the benefit of the Avon Fire Authority YouTube channel. So I'm going to ask members to introduce themselves. So I'm Councillor Ben Nutman, I'm the Chair of the Avon Fire Authority, Chair of this committee, and I'm from South Worcestershire Council. So.
I'm Councillor Hayward, and I represent Noel for Bristol City Council.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Paul May. I'm a councillor for Clark and North East Somerset, and I represent Pensford and Whitchurch Village.
Councillor Richard Eddy, Bristol Bishops Wood.
Okay, if I could just ask the officers to introduce themselves now. So we'll start with Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members, ladies and gentlemen. Simon Shilton, your Chief Fire Officer.
Good morning, members and colleagues. Richard Welch, Assistant Chief Fire Officer.
Good morning, everybody. Luke Gaslard, Assistant Chief Officer.
Good morning, Richard Stokes, Davestry Inclusion Manager.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Ian Potter. I'm Head of Service Transformation and the HMI CFRS SLO.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Robin Glaze. I'm the Pensions Advisor.
Tanya Nathan, Head of Procurement.
Good morning, Claire Bentley, Head of Finance.
Good morning, Patrick Holland, Head of Estates.
Good morning, I'm Jane Williams-Lock and I'm the Deputy Director of Corporate Services.
Good morning, Emma Bowen, Democratic Services Assistant. Good morning, Amanda Brown, Clark to Avon Fire Authority.
Thank you, members and officers. So I'd just like to remind everyone to put their phones on silent if you haven't done so, do so now. Okay, just to remind everyone that if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. Please use your microphones for the benefit of the video recording, and turn them off once you've finished. Just to advise members, officers and anyone watching that any votes that will be taken today, the procedure will be any votes against, any abstentions, and then any votes for. So with that, so item 7, which is the minutes of the ordinary meeting with the Policy and Resources Committee held on the 18th of April. I'll be completely honest with you, I wasn't at this meeting, so I'm not gonna, I'll move the minutes, but if I could ask for Councillors May and Eddie, who were present. Yeah. So, so Councillor May can propose, Councillor Eddie can second. Is everyone, any votes against? Any abstentions? Abstaining on that. And any votes for?
Can I just check, you're approving both the open and the confidential minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. Item 8, which is the update on the immediate detriment, which is going to be presented by Rich and with support from a big place. So Rich, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. The paper in front of you is a general update on the immediate detriment and the implementation of the remedy action. The paper also provides an update on the immediate detriment, immediate choice interest issue that we spoke about in our April meeting, in 18th of April, for Policy Resources. The Scheme Advisory Board has clarified the issue of payment of interest at 8% on arrears of pension and lump sum for all members, with exceptions as outlined in the paper, and the treatment of potential tax liability on that interest. Allowing the service to recommend to members the issuing of immediate choice remedial service statements. There are approximately 36 members of staff who have already retired under the immediate detriment, who are receiving some pension benefits, but not all. These are being recessed and any interest due will need to be paid. There are 79 members who retired without the benefit of immediate detriment. They may have retired before the authority initially decided to apply immediate detriment, or may have had complexities which previously couldn't be resolved. While these 79 retirees will be in receipt of a pension, and in most cases will have decided to retire based on income endowed by the applied, they will be receiving a lower pension whilst they wait for the government remedy to be applied. The update provided to the December PRC meeting explained that there has been a delay in the rollout of the software to calculate the remedy figures. The Government Actuaries Department, that they've calculated the software, they've had quite a few problems with that, which is caused a delay, but a pause was put on immediate choice cases, which was agreed at the April PRC meeting. Unfortunately, the software provider, Civica, are not yet able to provide figures for members' calculations, which has resulted in manual calculations over a 7-year period for each member that this needs to be applied to. As far as the immediate choice interest issue, this issue relates to those staff who have already retired and are waiting to receive their ID remedy in accordance with the legislation passed in October 23. The Treasury has agreed a compensation agreement for those retired members who qualify for the ID remedy, plus interest of 8% on arrears of pension and lump sum. At our April meeting, following the advice from the Scheme Advisory Board, it was agreed by the committee that we would pause on making those payments, as there were talks going on between His Majesty's Treasury and HMRC with the intention of trying to take away the tax liability for those payments. I believe, as far as tax liability for payments, probably do you want to give a very quick update on a meeting you attended this week?
Yeah, the interest has been agreed at 8%. There is another problem relating to lump sums where the amount taken has exceeded inland revenue, which is quite common in the 92 scheme. And where you exceed the inland revenue limit, the excess is taxed at 40%. Under remedy, when the second payment is made, they're not currently allowed to offset the first payment. So if you had somebody who had a tax bill of £6,000 in the first one and £10,000 in the second, logic says that you would only pay £4,000. At the moment, you pay £10,000. HMRC have admitted this is a mistake, and prior to the general election, one of the ministers was going to stand up and make a statement which would have removed this problem. We're now waiting for the new government, and it is on the top of their agenda to stand up before the 31st of July when they go into recess to make the statement. So at the moment we can't settle anybody who's exceeded inland revenue maximums. So
That was an update from a meeting yesterday, which is why that information is included in the paper. Further legislation dealt with the second option exercise to be undertaken with on-call firefighters who were not not offered a chance to join a pension scheme. All firefighters identified as being in scope have been contacted with an update and information about the upcoming exercise. The cases not in scope have also been notified. The second option will have an expected completion period of 18 months up to March 2025, which the remedy cases will also be settled by end of March 2025. So the position of the immediate choice interest issue is that the Scheme Advisory Board have asked HMRC to confirm whether the treatment of tax on interest should be in line with the treatment of the second option exercise. And their situation is that the arrears of pension are to be taxable under PAYE. Any interest associated with those arrears of pension is deemed authorised, and the tax treatment of such interest will be determined by the member's individual savings allowance. In short, what we're suggesting is that we move to a point where we do pay that money with the interest, and it becomes the individual's responsibility to address their tax issues that may arise. There are three categories that have been suggested by Scheme Advisory under green and the red. Green will be the initial ones that will be settled. The amber ones, under the conditions that are in the paper, will be settled provided there are no complex issues attached to them. Any that can't will be regularly updated. We will write to and update them on that situation. And the red ones will be put on hold because they are unprotected and taken into their legacy spin. So in light of these developments, 5.3, the recommended course of action is for the Committee to agree the Scheme Advisory Board recommendation as clarified with HMRC and instruct the service to proceed with issuing the ICRSS to eligible members from within the green category and wherever possible from within the amber category, including calculation and payment of interest at 8% on arrears of pension and lump sum. Further clarification is being sought about how members declare their interest to the HMRC. It is recommended to continue to pause members in the red category and keep those in the amber category updated where they cannot yet be processed. So the recommendations is the committee is asked to note the current position with immediate remedy, agree the Scheme Advisory Board recommendation and instruct the service to proceed with issuing the ICRSS to eligible members from the green category and wherever possible from the amber category. This includes payment of interest 8% on arrears of pension or lump sum, following clarification on the interest issue as outlined in paragraph 5.2, and to instruct the service to continue to pause members in the red category and keep those in the amber category updated where they cannot yet be processed.
Can I just add one thing, which is normally this paper would have gone first to the local pension board. That hasn't happened because the local pension board meeting date had to be rearranged at short notice. So what we've done instead is this paper has been cleared and checked by the independent chair of the local pension board, so that he is comfortable with the recommendation gave. He basically said as long as we recommend the scheme advisory board position, I start processing payments with the 8% interest, that would be his recommendation to the local pension board. Local pension board is not a decision body, it's an advisory body. So he's given you that advice via me verbally, so that you can take comfort that at least he's had sight of this before you consider this paper today.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Robin, for that. Obviously, what I will say before we go to questions is that this has been a highly stressful and technical case that we've had to deal with. So we'll obviously move to the recommendation hopefully in a minute, but we've got questions. So we go Mayor and Eddie.
Chair, thank you. Yes, as you say, it's quite a technical. I even struggled with the title of the report. But the simple fact is that I'm just checking the report. Very briefly says there's no financial application. So if that is actually the case, then I think we've got to take the advice that we've been given, and actually I would then move the recommendations, the three levels of recommendation in the report. I suppose I was just worried about what the implications are, a little bit more detail I would like around the red, to see what that actually means for the people that we're talking about. Because if we're pausing that, there's a social implication to that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Eddie?
Chairman, I very much agree with my colleague to my left. Can I also thank Richard and Robin for making quite a complex and esoteric issue almost undiscernible. The fact the options seem to be the most pragmatic and logical, so I can't see any issue with them. Can I just ask Robin, if this taxation problem isn't resolved by the end of July, presumably any decision will be retrospective?
Yes.
Fine.
Any further questions? No? Okay, so I'm going to put on to recommendation. So, yeah, so that's very second. Okay, any votes against? Any abstentions?
Chair, can I just ask the question about the implications?
For the social implications.
Could we just have that before we finally make the vote?
I don't know if Robin will have the information in the room about exactly who's in the red category. We've got to be careful not to give personal information out of this meeting. We might be able to take that offline. Robin, I won't answer for you, but we can take it offline if needed.
I think what we can do is that obviously any decisions that we make today won't directly financially impact those in the red category. So obviously we'll be pausing those processes. So what we can do, we can take the decision today. We can then get you the social implication answer offline from Richard and Robin, work together on that, and then come back to people with an actual full answer. Is that okay? So if you have to proceed with that, then we'll go to the close. Yeah? Is that okay? Okay, so any votes against? Any abstentions? All votes for?
Wasn't involved in the discussion, so no.
Okay, so item 9, which is the service improvement. So Ian, can you take that?
Thank you, Chair. So the report before you today is it's the second combined updated report for service improvement. It focuses on the progress made against the HMIC FRS Round 3 inspection action plans, transformation and our efficiency and savings programmes. In terms of governance around it, just to remind members that we have established a service improvement board which met initially once a month. It now meets bi-monthly, and I think it's fair to say with each meeting that we have, we're improving both the information that's provided to the members of the board and also the conversations at those meetings. The next meeting will be at Bedminster Fire Station, and there will be a pre-meeting with some of the crew there from those members, and then we'll go into the meeting. So I think that's really developing on very well at the moment. And the feedback from our external board members is very positive as well. In terms of the action plan itself, you'll see that there are a number of dashboards and pie charts and tables there. It's broken down between each of the accelerated causes of concern and causes of concern, and then also the areas for improvement. What I've done this time around is there is a table so we can see, we can track progress from the previous meeting to this one. So at the moment there's 2 there. I'm proposing in the next report to have a maximum of 3, and then at each subsequent meeting, one will drop off, the new one will go on. Just in case you're wondering why there aren't pie charts for the first couple, all of those that do have 3 or more data points. Those first 2 only have 2 data points, so actually it doesn't really make sense to have a pie chart with just those two pieces. Obviously, as we go through the actions through to completion, we may well see some of those pie charts drop off for some of those others too. So I don't propose to go through each one in detail. Members can see the progress that's being made. What I would say is that, generally speaking, across all of our actions, there's some really good progress being made. I would just draw attention to the first accelerated cause of concern on the mobilising software. You'll notice that we've reopened one of the actions. It's around the welfare sessions for our fire control staff. There are a small number of people who haven't yet received those sessions, but they will have all completed those by the 19th of August. And then we will be looking at what we do in terms of refresher. Okay, so it's not a case of just doing it once. In terms of sustaining that improvement, we'll look at what's an appropriate period between refresher and also what we can accommodate in our welfare team. But that's, I would anticipate that one will be closed next time around. So I continue, or do you want to take questions on that, just that part?
I think Councillor Eddie's got a question on that part.
Later.
So yeah, just keep going, we'll try and take it all.
Okay, fine, thank you. So the areas for improvement, again, some good progress in terms of completion there. The focus is very much on the accelerated and causes of concern, but as I say, some really good progress on those areas for improvement also. Actions which are off track and at risk are in an exception table, which I'll come on to shortly. There was an HMIC FRS Spotlight report into values and culture published in March 2023, and there were a number of recommendations arising from that for fire and rescue services. We have one action outstanding at the moment, which is around the fire standards leading the service, which is in the exception table as well. I'll come on to that one too. In terms of action plan assurance, this is something that we're bringing quite a lot of attention to just at the moment. So our action owners are responsible for identifying that an action has been completed, that we have the evidence. That evidence is uploaded to our improvement register so that we can see exactly what's been done. Now we know that in some cases we don't have quite enough evidence to show that it's been completed. So we're doing some work at the moment to understand where that's not quite right. In the meantime, we have commissioned some independent audit expertise to help us with both our quality management system and around one of the causes of concern also. But what I would say is that within our improvement register, we've added some additional columns around the expected outcomes and those outcomes actually delivered. So I think one of the potential unhelpful things about an action plan is it focuses on the word action. An action isn't really the point, it's the outcome. It's what is it designed to do? Is it delivering that? And if it is, that should then resolve the cause of concern from HMI. So it's definitely something that we are increasingly talking about outcomes, not just actions and action completion. One of the external or independent audits was from one of our Service Improvement Board members, who's a member of the NFCC, into our quality management system. And the outcome of that audit was that there was partial assurance in relation to his findings, with a few observations around good practice and some opportunities for improvement, which we're currently working through at the present time. We've also had recently an internal audit of our Service Improvement Board governance arrangements. It's in draft form at the moment, so we're expecting a final report on that shortly. So I'll bring that to the next PRC meeting. In this update, it will also go to AJOC as part of the rest of the audit updates too. But without going into detail, because it is a draft report, it has come out very positively in terms of the outcome and assurance there. In terms of kind of ongoing revisiting around our causes of concern, we've already had two, which I brought to members previously. The next one is going to be taking place in September. So inspectors will be on site for the first week of that inspection, and then the second week is online. So they'll be meeting with people across the service in relation to our causes of concern. They'll be going to some whole-time stations and some on-call stations too to do some reality testing, and a couple of focus groups as well. So that will all come together to look at our progress, and for them to make some decisions about whether there is sufficient progress and robustness of plans to discharge one or more of them. At the moment, we don't have any information about any revisits beyond that. The next inspection round for all fire and rescue services starts sort of late summer next year. Ours is probably going to be in the first half of 2026 somewhere, so we've got a bit of time ahead of that. But also we need to be thinking ahead to the next one and not just focusing on what we're doing now, but what else might we need to look at for the next one. So that's all of the HMI, apart from the exception table, which I will go through, and then I'll come back to transformation. So at paragraph 551, there's an exception table which covers all of those actions which are off track or at risk. All of the comments have come directly from the action owners. So again, I don't intend to go through every single one, but what you'll see from the table is what the action is, what the original completion date was, the status, and then where we are, and in most cases there is a revised date for completion. So I'm happy to take any questions around the table or any of the HMI stuff.
Thank you, Ian. Simon's going to come in and we're going to do questions and members on the HMIC progress report, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. So what we're trying to focus on more now, members, is, as Ian referenced it, about the outcomes. So very much, okay, you've told me, you've shown me, and now prove it. And what helps with applying additional audit processes against our action plans. It prevents, as Ian stated there earlier on, perhaps this task and finish approach, but more focuses on, is it doing exactly what we said on the tin, in essence? So is it making a difference in the way that we intended to, so that it become more sustainable? What we don't want to do is find ourselves in this continual cycle of improvements. Recognising the inspector will always find some tweaks and areas where there may be areas where we can improve. But certainly, I think this continual road of potholes, as I would call it, is not sustainable for the organisation. And that probably is as a result of perhaps the danger of a task-orientated approach to an action plan. Even the wording in the HMI, we must produce an action plan, as Ian suggested there, almost leads you to a bit of, right, we'll just do something in the hope that it'll make a difference. So we're very much now moving our focus and our energy, continue the momentum, but our focus on energy on outcomes, and is it really making a difference? And if it's not, why isn't it? And do we need to do something differently? So that brings into the continual improvement and governance arrangements over a lot of our improvement areas, or areas that we are investing in as well. Thank you, Chair.
Well, with that, what Simon just said, it's not just about those action points, but it's also that transformational change we're trying to bring into the service in Avon. And it has been noted whenever me and Simon have gone to our meetings in Westminster that actually we are seeing that change happen. So obviously it's a massive task, it's a huge amount of work to try and do. It's not going to be completed overnight, and I think everyone fully recognises that, from board level to forest level down to everyone who's doing any part of this work. But yeah, I think we're on the right track on this, and obviously I'd like to thank everyone who's taken an active part in bringing this change about. So with that, I think we've got questions. So Councillor May was going to ask a question, and then Councillor Reddy.
Thank you, Chair. The last meeting I registered, and I've got to congratulate Amanda on the quality of reporting the minutes, which was very fairly reported. I registered my concern about how we were doing. Very kindly you sent out the comparison with the other fire authorities up and down the country. And I actually felt there was a criticism of us as councillors about we weren't actually focusing on the outcomes. We were happy to accept the plans, but not whether the outcomes were being delivered. So I think it's good news to hear that you're actually doing that. But I would still ask, in terms of our timing, whether when they re-inspect in September, we could in actual fact, as members of the Policy and Resources Committee, could get some feedback rather quicker than waiting till the next meeting or the next fire authority. Thank you, Chair.
We can certainly share the outcomes of their inspection for 2 weeks. They confirm that in writing, but that normally or can take several weeks before we receive that. We'll get some verbal indications of what they may have found during their revisit. So the Chair and I will have almost what's called a hot debrief a few days after their visit. And as I said, sometimes it takes several weeks before we get the confirmation of their findings and their I guess, decisions in relation to the cause of concern. But certainly share.
Yeah, I mean, they will send, if you like, a draft report for accuracy checking and things like that, and it's the normal way. So I suppose really it would just be handy for the Policy and Resources Committee councillors to have some idea of the general themes that are emerging, because it is a major issue for the authority, and under those circumstances we need to be working effectively with the administration, the management, to actually make sure that we are making the progress, because quite clearly we were in major problems in terms of the HMI, and I think it's important that there is progress that we can, and you're absolutely right, we've got to have the evidence that we're actually doing that, because they'll come in and be asking people, and that's where it's difficult for the authority. Thank you, Chair.
Council, I've taken it as an action, and then I will have recorded your comments, so thank you for that. What we'll do is we'll get everything to you as soon as we can. So as the Chief has said, sometimes the letter arrives quite late, but we can give you a summary of the hot debrief, so you've got that.
And if it's not the formal response, I hope, and we can minute, that the councillors would keep that as confidential. So I think that would be important for you to know that that would be confidential to us.
Just to follow up on Councillor's main point, when I took over as chair, I said that my phone would always be on for councillors to contact me, certainly around anything that we do in the service, but obviously directly related to, because it's a major cause of concern, and it's something that not only the authority are working incredibly hard on, but also obviously the SLB and everyone at every single level in Avon Fire Service concentrating on trying to resolve the many issues that we have. We are making progress. Councillor Reddy, do you have a question?
Yes. May I firstly thank Ian for his very helpful report and also his commentary obviously it's quite high level, of course, but most of the work packages are making quite encouraging progress. As he indicated, I suppose the areas which cause me the most concern are the service improvements tabled at 5.51, and quite a high level of this is either listed at risk or off target. So the table actually provides some background information, so I'm not trying to probe more there, but do have a realistic confidence when you come back in 3 months, you'll be able to report more significant progress here.
Yes, I think, I mean, first of all, I'd say in the context of the number of actions, there are about 235 actions, and I think there are about a dozen or so in the table, so it is a very small percentage. But just looking at the dates that have been provided, if unless there are any other issues arising in the meantime, I would expect the majority, if not all of these, to be completed next time around. Of course, there may be some other new ones that crop up, but certainly having looked through this, thinking about when the next meeting is, I would expect most, if not all, to be completed by then. Yeah.
Thank you. And obviously, I do have a question, but I'm just going to make a quick comment first in terms of, obviously, we've used the term action plan, and actually it's probably not the most helpful phrase, but actually, what we have to remember is that this body is a scrutiny body. So our role as councillors is to play a scrutiny role in terms of making sure that those that are devising action plans are obviously not just following through on them, but obviously delivering those achievable targets, and that's something that as managers and secretary have regularly commented on and making sure that all councils are playing their part in whatever role on their board on here. Ian, my question is, obviously, we've got this, the points in 5.51, we've got a number of off-track actions regarding culture, just as an umbrella term, if I can use that. So 3.217, 3.2129, and 3.28.3. Obviously, values, behaviours, support for female staff, and the grievance policy. Now, obviously, I know that there are comments next to it in terms of either extension of deadlines or when these things are going to be finalised. It's a bit of an unfair question, but why are they off track to begin with, seeing that culture is playing such a vital role in the HMIC-FRS report? And are we still on track to achieve these things by this date?
In terms of why they're off track, so if I take the DBS check one, because that's the earliest date first, I think we had about 850 members of staff to take through the DBS process. It's quite a significant task. There are various complications. So I think the majority of people, it's relatively straightforward, but there are some that are more complex cases, and so it's getting down to those, just literally a handful now, and they're like the most complex still to do. I think what we need to be looking at once we've completed this, because we have to do this every 3 years, is how might we do it better next time? What we learn in terms of that complexity. So I think it's just down to those complexities why that one is off track. But this was 5 when I wrote it. It could possibly be fewer than 5 now. In terms of the review of the values, ethics and behaviour framework, I think with that and a number of other actions, when the action's written, is written with a specific activity in mind, sometimes subsequent to that, other things come along, and actually we think it would be good to include that in the thinking, and therefore it's better to delay and get a better outcome than just rigidly stick to the time that we'd originally set. So I think that's with that and a number of other actions, and I think certainly anything that was around an accelerated cause of concern or cause of concern, the actions were written sort of 9 to 12 months ago. So it's really difficult to, you do it at the time about what you think is realistic, but I think we're much more interested in a quality piece of work than getting an action ticked off, if you like. With the staff engagement network, I'm not personally hugely excited on the progress of this. The comment there was that it's expected to launch at the end of August. So there may be some unknown things that I'm unaware of that may influence that. But I think, again, it's more important we get it right and it's actually meaningful and it delivers the outcomes we're looking for, rather than fixing to the deadline itself.
Thank you for the answer. I think that's reassuring to know that actually we're not just trying to tick things off our list. Actually, we're trying to actually bring about meaningful change in the service and actually do a quality piece of work instead of just saying that we've done a tick box exercise. So thank you, Ian. I think Richard's still got a question or a comment.
An update, really. Just in addition to what Ian's commented on, obviously, as we've said, our concentration around the culture action plan that was written about 12 months ago is for the quality of it rather than just tick box. I could go for each one of them and update members, but I'm sure you don't have a time for that right now. I'm happy to at any point. But it's also worth remembering too, and the important point is we've added an awful lot of other things to our cultural action plan that aren't going to impact that we've done to improve our culture in a longer term basis. And just this week, Simon and I were at a national conference around culture, and not that we should ever use this as a measure, but for our own sort of pat on the back really, is that in comparison to other FRSs, the DBS, for example, I think it's 25% of fire services where you have not started that. 50% of services are only 50% through their HMI spotlight report. We've got one at risk. So we've made an awful lot of progress, and more than happy to update in detail, but it is about quality rather than quantity. So that may have slowed things down a bit, but as Simon has said, it's about we need to be able to prove to HMI how we not only deliver these things, but we embed them. Yeah. That's always the more difficult part. But we are spending more time on that, we've made it impacted to these. That's helpful.
Thanks. And the comment I will make before I go to Council May is that actually, in terms of the actions that we've got here, is actually we are going beyond what's requested.
Absolutely.
So we've got the base level where we should be in, but we're actually going beyond that to make sure that all the things that we're being asked to do, we're not only meeting, but we're doing it more. Council May, and then Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just, there's not a single person in this room who doesn't really passionately care about this. But I just want to extend a bit beyond this room. We've got a lot of people who work for us, and they just see the, if you like, the bad marks. But they're all dedicated to what they're doing. And around the staff engagement, I do think if we've got a follow-up inspection taking place, it's important from the Chief Fire Officer that we're firing out the message that we're thanking the people for what they're doing, that we want you to engage with this, and we're doing what we can at the top level to actually make sure we get a better inspection. Because I think it is important that the people who work for us actually feel that they care about their job and we care about them. And I do think that I see all the notes which Emma always sends out, which are always really positive, but this is a difficult time for the Fire Authority, and I think it'd be nice if we can use that difficult time in a positive way, firing out messages to our staff, because I think, talking to ordinary fire officers on the ground, they're aware that things are going on, but they don't actually understand necessarily what the detail is. It just feels as though they're doing their best for the job, but they're just getting criticised for it. So I do think there's an issue there, how we communicate with our ordinary, not ordinary, our frontline staff.
And that's a really good point, Councillor. We've just done visits this week, actually, to our stations, some of our stations, and we're just in the process of doing a regular visits again. And that is exactly the conversation that's taking place, and that's generated by our staff, not by ourselves, and certainly around them. Also want to bring back some pride, because they don't want to be seen as they don't want to be seen as a negative connotation on them or our service, and they're very, very proud to work for our service. And certainly that's a conversation generated by themselves, and it's absolutely spot on.
And I hope this committee can reinforce that in the minutes, that is the message that we're sending out to our staff.
Councillor Hayward first, and then
Still on that same point, is that right?
is that the same point? Yeah.
Just, echoing what Simon said, it's absolutely right. That is such an important thing, that we are all constrained so hard on perfection that actually we need to recognise that we've got some really good people doing some really good work. But what's quite reassuring for us as a senior leadership board, is that in the last 2 weeks we've had 2 compliments that we've published in our internal publication from our staff, recognising some of the differences that some of the things we've put in place that they appreciated and enjoyed. So I think as Simon said, we are now doing a whole programme of station visits. I've got one this afternoon, this evening at Avon, where we are really spending that time to, whilst we expect a lot of our staff, it's also really important that we recognise they do a lot as well. They're working hard because they've got a lot of pride in the service. So I think that's absolutely correct there, Councillor.
So I've got a question. There's a number of actions that are listed as not started, particularly under areas of improvement. Is there any more information you can give us about that, and whether there's any barriers to them getting started, or is it just a case of prioritising? And do we think they'll also be started by September when that is?
Yeah. I think I don't have that detail here at the meeting. What I'd say generally is that if they're not started, it's because they're not expected to start just yet. If they should have started and the delay puts it at risk, I would expect it to come up as an at risk, even though we haven't reached that date yet. But I can certainly check and put together a table of what that looks like.
Some AFIs are dependent, not time specific. It might be dependent on another action being completed before we can take the next one. And the revisit in September, HMI will be focusing on the 4 areas of cause of concern, and less so on the AFIs. They'll look at the AFIs if they're linked to the outcome of a cause of concern as well. Some have some correlation with each other, but it really is around capacity of the organisation. We are prioritising our cause of concern and certainly doing the necessary improvements that we need to from those. And the AFIs, whilst they're being progressed, they will start to come when capacity allows.
Thank you.
That's great. I'm going to move on to the next area, unless there are any other questions. Councillor May.
Can I just reinforce the point that we're judged as a fire authority by that follow-up inspection in September, and I do think we actually need to make sure that we're registering the urgency to make sure that these things are actually dealt with, not that it's in process, or that I do think we've actually got to say this is really urgent for the fire authority.
What I would say is that, and it's something that I repeatedly say, as Amanda and Simon know, is that our staff do amazing things day in, day out. They go beyond what most human beings do. And it's a terrible atmosphere to be in when you are obviously under investigation, and it seems like your work is being judged, maybe harshly. But what I would say is that for the repeated visits that me and Simon have made, I think Simon can attest to this, is that we are heading in the right direction and progress is being made. But there are still challenges that are there, and there's challenges that we're taking head on, not only from an officer perspective, but also from a council authority member perspective. And I think that we will get there at the end of the day. I don't know if it will be overnight, but it will certainly be a case whereby we will get to the end and we will come out of this phase. And actually the conversations that we've had, not just with there's actually some spectorate, but obviously the other members that sit in that room, they are fully behind us in trying to achieve this and get to where we need to be. So someone, if you want to make a comment more, move on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to reassure Councillor May, we put a lot of, this is a priority. You know, all of our improvement, as well as delivering our day-to-day services, is a priority. You can see that by the attention, the resources, the infrastructure that we put in place, and also the financial investment made by the authority in different areas. We have to be realistic around, as I said, about capacity and pace. You know, I'd rather, as Ian has referenced several times today, focus on the quality and making sure that we don't find ourselves in this continual cycle of improvements or poor reporting or poor opinion of us as a service. Because you know, I'm adamant this service does not deserve that at all. We've got some incredibly hard-working people who, you know, we lead and very privileged to lead, and want the very best for them in this service. But what I would like to say, Councillors, I will draw your attention to Appendix 2 of Ian's report, and you can see, certainly that's from the revisit back in March, and if you turn to page 66 on there, obviously the conclusions are very positive from the HMI in relation to their narrative in the direction of travel that we are taking as a service, and the focus that we are putting on as a leadership team in making these improvements where we need to.
Chair, can I just make it very clear that as councillors, the really last point, as councillors on this Policy and Resources Committee, we are duty bound to actually scrutinise and challenge, and I think that it's important that that is minuted that we are. But I don't want that then to be judged that we're being negative towards the fire authority, because I do think we've seen lots and lots of improvements taking place, and that urgency is there. So I just wanted to make sure that you actually recognise the fact that we are challenging, and I think we should be challenging, but that doesn't say we're challenging in a negative way.
Before we move on, I will say that Simon knows I'm his biggest critic, but also his biggest supporter in what we're currently trying to do. It's something we've made repeatedly to the inspectorate when we've gone to visits, and I'm sure that Simon can attest to my pressure, but the amount of scrutiny that I'm putting him under, and the authority in general put them under. Okay, so that was for information, so thank you, Ian. On to item 10 now.
Just checking, was there any final bit of
There was just a couple of bits, so sorry, yes.
See, that's the amount of investment we've put into the HYC apparatus management, totally missed on our part of the agenda, so Ian, sorry.
Okay, but if I may, just three very quick points just on HMI. So in terms of the next round of inspection action plans, I think how we compose those actions will be somewhat different. So they will be outcome-focused actions, and we can get that in the wording, which will help make sure we're driving that. The second is that our action plan is now published on our website for the causes of concern and the spotlight report, and that will get updated bi-monthly. So that's the action and the current status. We will be adding to that as we go along in terms of the outcomes that's delivering, to make sure that that's the focus, but we've got a duty to publish, so that's what we've done, and we'll improve that as we go forward. And then the other thing was just around the good news and sharing. We do share our weekly staff newsletter with HMI, with our HMI lead, and I have a monthly meeting with him as well, and we talk about what's going on, the progress we're making, and so on. So, we've got a good relationship with the HMI. We're sharing that information, so it's important that we get that into the newsletter, so that that is kind of formalised, if you like. But that's certainly happening at the moment. In terms of transformation, you'll see there that I think the biggest thing since the last meeting is that we've implemented the third of the 4 improvements to the software. So we're now on the very latest version of Firewatch. It comes with single sign-on, so a sort of additional username and passwords and all the hassle that goes along with that has now gone. And it means that we can then go on and start looking at the next phase, which is a replacement for our Rappel system for our on-call colleagues, a mobile app, and some mobilisation improvements for fire control as well. So that's the next bit of focus on the software. Recruitment, interview process, induction, so this is the whole end-to-end process for corporate staff. We had paused that work due to reduced capacity and other work priorities in the HR team. That's now recommenced and is on track, and we're anticipating that work to be completed early next year. There are a couple of work packages that have been removed from the programme. One is because the team have come up with an alternative solution and implemented that, so we've removed that from the programme. And the other related to the introduction of smart screens on station, which would share operational and corporate information and messaging. There's quite a significant capital cost to that. We meet regularly to look at the capital programme and the priorities there, and also in terms of what's really important right now. So it's been kind of removed from the programme. The programme ends on the 31st of March. We anticipate it coming before the end of the programme, but it's kind of there to be revisited at a future point, when finances and capacity allows. In terms of efficiency and savings programme, the first is around further enhancement and use of the Firewatch software, and there's work going on to identify what some of those might be. We're working on some administrative improvements at the moment around courses and joining instructions and semi-automating that process. There's some significant efficiencies to be gained there, which means that our staff can work on other sort of higher value work. There's the alternative duty system, which is around 3 models being researched at the present time, and obviously the impacts that any changes might have will be fully considered with that. And then I think the only other thing to mention was just quickly around how we record risk at a corporate level for the transformation programme. So transformation, HMI and efficiency and savings are now amalgamated into one risk. But in terms of how we monitor it, they are split out into individual programmes because they've got different risk profiles. So it's under one umbrella, and then there are subsets within that in our new way of recording risk. So that's the only other change to bring to members' attention.
Thank you, Ian. Any questions from members? No? Yeah, Councillor May.
You look at me, Chair. Can I just around the IT system, the timescale of that, please? Because you've said it's work is already underway. Can you give some idea of the timescale involved with that being implemented? And the other thing is around the risk system. Is the risk system actually out there into each one of the fire stations so that you can pick up risks coming up through the organisation? Or is it purely a top-down risk assessment?
Hang on, so we've got 2 separate questions there. I think Simon wants to come in, so if we can do the first one in terms of the IT system, Ian, if you can answer it, then we'll get to Simon, okay?
Yeah. So the final part we're looking at around about October. I think with all IT projects, it depends what we find when it comes to testing. So that's what we're looking at the moment. But again, we want to make sure that we get this right. There were a couple of issues arising from the last update that we want to understand, to make sure that doesn't get carried forward into the final part, and particularly as the next final piece is bigger in scale in terms of impact. So we just want to make sure that any risks are mitigated before we deploy it. But that's what we're looking at the moment in the autumn.
I think Simon's going to address Councillor May's risk.
Yes, sure. Yeah, so the risk methodology is based on the corporate risk, strategic risk compliance with legislation, etc. We do have a member training day in September to look at how we now have revised all of our risk management and the framework that puts in place. So hopefully that might give you some assurance there on how we manage the corporate risk from that. And obviously the improvement programme is corporate risk for us around the delivery.
You should have a diary invite for the 6th of September. It's Friday. It's really good.
Okay, well, it's something for all members to look forward to. Any further questions for Ian? No? Okay, so that one was coordinated and for information. So item 10, which is to agree and monitor procurement forward plan, which is going to be presented by Tanya.
So you have in front of you the current procurement pipeline, and all items of estimated value above 250,000, and the items in yellow are those that you may see at this, all the business cases that you may see in the future. So that's just so you're aware of the ones that you might see. 2 of them, I believe, are coming up, so you'll be able to discuss those in a moment. I don't tend to go through line by line or anything like that, but obviously if you've got any specific questions on any of those items, do let me know, and I'm happy to provide any information I can or follow up later.
Any questions? Just for noting. Okay, thank you, Tanya. So 11 is the gender pay gap and ethnic pay gap reporting. Richard?
Thank you, Chair. The pay gap in front of you is the gender pay gap and ethnicity pay gap reporting, and the snapshot date of 31st of March 2024. This report combines the gender pay gap and ethnicity pay gap updates, and the committee is asked to note and approve the content of the gender pay gap and ethnicity pay gap report and approve its publication. As a public sector employer with over 250 members of staff, Avon Fire and Rescue Service is required by law to publish information on the gender pay gap under the Equality Act 2010, Gender Pay Gap Information Regulations 2017. This is our 6th gender pay gap report since the introduction of the mandatory requirement for private and public sector organisations to calculate and publish a gender pay gap report in 2017. The ethnicity pay gap reporting still remains voluntary for public bodies, despite recommendations of Baroness McGregor-Smith in her 2017 report for Race in the Workplace, and the former government's commitment in March 22 to tackling unfair racial disparities in Britain in the Inclusive Britain report. In July 2023, the former government published the results of a consultation on whether to make ethnicity pay gap reporting mandatory. The conclusion was that guidance to support voluntary reporting was preferable to a new mandatory reporting obligation. The current government's equal pay proposals may include mandatory pay reporting on ethnicity and disability. The gender pay gap for Avon Fire and Rescue Service as of the snapshot date of the 31st of March 2024 was a negative 1.98% in favour of female staff, which equates to a 35 pence pay differential between female and male staff. This is a reduction of 1.4 percentage points compared to the pay gap last year, which was 3.37% in favour of male staff. The main reason for this variation is due to changes in middle and senior management levels, including an interim male treasurer being imposed prior to the substantive appointment of a female statutory finance officer in May 2023. A female station manager was also appointed through a direct entry programme in November 2023, and there was a temporary promotion of a female to station manager in May of the same year. The There's also been an increase in females in the highest paid and mid-upper quartiles of the salary quartile bands, and a reduction in males in the top paid quartile. We are fully committed to further reduce the pay gap through various initiatives like positive action, the Leadership Academy, promotions and direct entry. We are encouraged that our gender pay gap has consistently remained below the national average year on year. In terms of the ethnicity pay gap, as of the 31st of March was 5%. This is a slight reduction in the pay gap reported on the 31st of March 2023, which was at 5.4%. As I have highlighted in previous reports, the numbers of ethnic minority staff in the service remain small, around about 28, which makes it challenging to obtain meaningful data. It also means that any slight changes within that demographic can result in significant fluctuations in pay gap percentages. Additionally, 12% of the workforce have not stated their ethnicity. Declaring information on protected characteristics is voluntary, and we can only rely on what information staff choose to share with us. However, we are soon due to relaunch a self-service provision that will enable staff to update their personal details within the Firewatch accounts. This will help us collect and analyse more accurate information to help us identify any disparities and increase the quality of opportunity for all staff. The service is committed to continuously improving outcomes for gender and ethnicity within the workforce to ensure that our culture is truly inclusive for women and ethnic minority staff, and that we can achieve full gender and ethnicity pay parity. The DICE unit and HR will continue to work together to improve our recruitment processes, which will include exploring effective methods for collecting data and information about candidates and broadening the reach of our recruitment efforts by using key external partners such as local authorities, quality networks, community groups and organisations in our service area. And that concludes my report, so I'll be happy to take any questions.
That's great, thank you, Richard, fantastic report. I think we've got questions from Councillor May.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, on the ethnicity issue, you said we've only got 28 BME employees in the whole of the fire service? I mean, in terms of the model across North Somerset, Baines, Bristol, South Gloss, that strikes me as that's not reflecting the communities that we serve.
Yes, as I sort of stated there, there was at least 12% of our staff that hadn't registered or not stated, so there could be other ethnic minority staff within that number. But at our last count, it was around 28. Most of them are operational staff, and they are spread out across those service areas. But rightly so, it doesn't reflect the sort of local communities.
Yeah, so I suppose it's just, is there an action that should follow on from this? You mentioned around being more active in recruitment, but you didn't make that particularly relevant to the minority groups.
With the use of positive action, especially in our recruitment process, our recruitment processes are underpinned by positive action, and they are service value based as well. Our community engagement programs within the DICE program does focus on key areas where there is high density of diversity. And our engagement with those community groups and our key partner organisations also exposes our as employer of choice. In particular, that our Stepping Up, or the Stepping Up programme, which was once run by the council, now gone independent, does have a diversity focus as well, and so we do sort of promote our organisation there.
Thank you.
Okay, Richard wants to come in.
I just also wanted to add, everything that Richard said there, we're trying to do as much work as we can to engage with the communities and become more of an employer of choice. But one of our issues, of course, is that the majority of our workforce are operational, and our turnover in that area is very small. So we only, may only run one recruitment course per year for full-time firefighters, which may only be 12 people. So the opportunity for that improvement are quite minimal, but we are, I'm rest assured that we are doing everything we can, Richard and his team, to make sure that we are raising our profile in that area.
Okay, I've got Amanda, then I've got Robin, then I've got Tom.
It was just to say that at previous meetings, I think we have asked councillors to help us project the message about recruiting from all backgrounds. So I think, we can, certainly because we've got new members on the Fire Authority now, make sure that when Richard Stokes is doing a particular outreach opportunity, that's circulated to all elected members so you can get it out to your networks, because there is a lot of hard work going on, but obviously with your help it can get further, so that would be really helpful, and that's come up at previous meetings.
All I would say on that is that actually we can be fire services ambassadors on this, so actually if you don't think that we're doing something or we're not doing enough, actually you can take that as an action point for yourself to go out into communities and try and look at those areas that we need to improve on and actually do some work there yourselves alongside Richard, what he's done. So Robin and then Tom.
Yeah, thanks for the report. It's just a question about 12% of people who are participating. I mean, I realise it is voluntary. 12% is quite a high number compared to other similar organisations. I suppose I'm slightly concerned do we understand why that is? Because of course, on a relatively small number, participation is key, otherwise the statistics become not that many people.
Yeah. It's not unique at first to ethnicity. There are a number of protected characteristics where people choose not to state their protected characteristics. Disability, LGBTQ plus is a couple of others as well. As I've said, the sharing of data, personal data, is voluntary, and we can only ask. And we have improved our diversity monitoring form to ensure that people can self-describe and set their protected characteristics. And you're right that there are, we do compare to other organisations, but it's not unique to Avon Fire and Rescue Service. There are many other public sector organisations that have that problem with sort of not stated or not declared. We're doing everything we can to try and improve that. As I've mentioned, that launch of our self-service and a good communication out to all the staff to sort of explain why we collect data, what we do with it, how long we keep it, and reassure them that it is confidential. Hopefully will help improve that confidence for people to share that information for us.
It tends to be curious rather than critical. Do we have any feedback from because it's difficult with confidential information as to why people have chosen not to participate?
No feedback as yet, but I've been sort of doing equality and diversity for quite a while, and this is not something new. I think it's quite prevalent, really, that people can be quite concerned about, what relevance their protected characteristics are to them doing their job. So it's not, as I say, it's nothing new, but it's something that employers and certainly ourselves have been tackling for quite a while and will continue to do so.
Thank you.
Tom?
So my questions were along a similar line. I think you talked about the self-service, which sounds good, but is that going to address reducing that gap? Is it an ability to do it? I suppose the question I have is, with newly recruited staff, are we having better uptake in terms of provision of that data? Is this sort of challenge with existing staff and culture and giving that confidence to existing staff, was it as much of an issue with, say, newly recruited staff as well? I just wondered if any analysis has been done around that.
We do collect data at recruitment stages, and with the upgrade of our diversity monitoring form to be a bit more inclusive in terms of the questions we're asking, we hope to get better information there, but as I say, it's really quite difficult. You can't force people to give that information, and also the information they do give, that's on their own basis, and we can only use what information we get, really. So I can't answer any of that.
It's spoiled me just because I'm new as well, but one thing I just wanted to understand, when with the forms, if they're not filling out the form at all, or is it because they're then selecting, say, prefer not to stay on the form?
There are, in terms of our the workforce data, there are two separate sort of sections which are prefer not to say, and we do collect sort of data on that. But obviously there is a not stated aspect of it as well. We have to also report our data to the Home Office yearly, and we are sort of being put to task at tackling that not stated by the Home Office as well. So it is a matter that we are trying to really tackle.
And Bridget, you may not be able to answer this now, but do you know the split between not stated and those that have chosen not to volunteer the information?
I haven't got those figures now, but I certainly can get them to you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great, thank you. Move on to that. What I would say though is that there's a lot of statistics there. It would be great if we had 100% of the information so that we can make more informed decisions. But we are where we are at the moment, and hopefully that does change in the future. But just to get some snapshots of this, is actually we're now in favour. The pay gap is now actually in favour of women, which is actually encouraging. We've recently taken on a new area manager who will also be a temporary assistant chief fire officer. So actually this report isn't completely reflected. Actually, it's probably there's more better information to come, which I think Rich will probably agree with. So we're making strides, but obviously we can always do better and we can always do more. But I think for where we are at the moment, it is encouraging, and want to Richard to keep on doing the great work that you're doing. Councillor May?
Sorry, Chair. The recommendation is to note and approve, so I think we need to...
Yep, so I was going to go on to that.
Oh, sorry, I'm doing the chair job for you, apologise. But can we just make sure that the last paragraph quite clearly sets out the challenge for us around this? And I think it would be worthwhile if we perhaps could consider whether we get a report back in, say, 6 months' time, rather than just an annual snapshot. Because I think it would be quite handy for us to make sure that we are keeping the attention on that.
We reviewed our terms of reference not long ago, and this is one of the annual reports, so I'm keen not to change the terms of reference again. I am going to be holding a constitution working group to go over chapters, so we can consider that there, if that's okay. What I don't want to do is create unnecessary work, which means the officer is up there and getting on with the job, but constantly drafting reports. So we could do a verbal update if that's easier. Okay.
And I think what I would say, what I could say is obviously there's always going to be open invitations to this meeting if Richard needs to come to the group of something that he thinks is of concern. Okay. Okay, so the recommendation is the committee to note and approve the content of the gender pay gap and ethnicity pay gap report as of the 31st of March 2024, and to approve the publication of the report. So any votes against? Any abstentions? Votes for? Go. Thank you, members. Okay, so item 12, which is the PFI update and options. Richard Butch.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank Councillor Reddy for recognising me trying to simplify my last paper, and I shall endeavour to do the same for this one. So this paper updates members following a paper considered by the full fire authority back in December 22, where members decided the service should conduct a detailed phase of planning for the preferred option, namely the acquisition of Severn Park Training Centre for future training potential estate rationalisation and consolidation of service functions within one location. The premises currently sitting in Severn Park Training Centre is part of a PFI project. That PFI comes to an end at the end of March 2028. Our share of this currently is 50%. The other 50% shared equally between Devon Somerset Fire Rescue Service and Gloucestershire Fire Rescue Service. The team that's been established to look at this, I've done a lot of work over the last 18 months looking at options for us for Severn Park or delivery of our training and rationalisation of our estate. There are four options that are presented within the paper. First of all, we've got the draw attention to 4.2 in the paper. That shows that the expenditure for Severn Park, for the running costs for Severn Park. Up until now, or up until March 2028, obviously being a PFI project, our token payments under the PFI umbrella have been a huge benefit for us. And really, it's been a fantastic resource, which unavoidably it ends on the 31st of March 28. Our current, section 4.6, our annual revenue costs currently paid for Severn Park contract and our lease for our headquarters and the estimated cost of maintaining Lansdowne for our control is just over 1.5 billion. So I think that's the relevant figure for the four options. Option one being that we exit the lease from here and no longer maintain a facility at Severn Park. Option two being that we retain Severn Park solely as a training venue only. Option three, and the preferred option, or recommended option should I say, is to retain Severn Park for residential training, headquarters, with the option of looking at phase two of the project of possibly adding fire control into the premises as well. And option four is to retain Severn Park for non-residential training with headquarters and fire control. Our conversations with the other two fire services currently is that they have no interest in continuing with the contract. Part of the contract that we have on the PFI is at the end of the contract we must turn the site to how we took it over, i.e. flatten the site, if that's what Bristol City Council decide they want, or one service takes over. Devon and Somerset have their own training facility and they're quite happy to walk away and carry on the training within the service. Gloucestershire, however, they've got some plans for their own training venue, but that's some time away. It's quite probably, I would estimate 2 to 5 years away. In the meantime, they would be interested in us providing them some training on a cost recovery basis for their training they can't provide in-house. So, option one, happy to go into as much detail as you require, but I think most of this should be in the paper. But option one for us to exit the lease, you'll notice on the table in 4.8 that there are two tables there. The first one being the fact that if Bristol City Council decides that they wanted the site returned to its original state, there would be a cost for demolition of the site and returning to that. Our share of that cost would be around £375,000. Therefore, our first year increase in its current cost would be around £797,000. And then ongoing costs year on year would be around £422,000. But that obviously option one, it then causes a huge amount of other on costs. We've now got to find other places to be able to provide our training, which if I can draw you to appendix 1 of the paper, that kind of gives a bit of a, whilst I apologise for being a small table, it does give a bit more of a better understanding of what the overall costs are per year. The annual running costs, including annual increase in running costs compared to current costs, you'll see option one there is £422,427. So the additional cost within option one is the expansion of other training facilities within our own estate to try to provide training that we currently have here, which I think we've got different. Option two would be to retain Severn Park solely as a training venue, which would be entering into a new lease with Bristol City Council. Our head of estates has had a conversation with Bristol City Council, who indicated that they would be quite happy to provide an additional or another 25-year lease on the site, and solely utilise the site as a training centre only for housing development instant court. that does give us a reduction of 3 of our training staff, which would mean that they could go back into service, but due to the fact of outsourcing some of our other costs, the continuation of paying for our lease at Portishead for headquarters, the fire control, that we're expecting a per year increase against current costs of just under £750,000, £723,000. In addition to that, our additional costs which are shown in Appendix 1 for that option, we've got the IT infrastructure, change of staff location cost, in option 3, which is our recommended option. As I said, as with the previous option, service would use 7 part of our main training venue, incorporating learning and development, but utilise the rest of the building as a police, as a service headquarters, removing the cost of lease of the Portishead police headquarters. We currently lease 90 desks, 90 I believe at headquarters. So the plans that we've done here will allow us for 94 for our headquarters staff, in addition to having all of our training being done from here, which again would give us a reduction of 3 training staff and provides 50% of the residential bedrooms upstairs if we decide to use those for cost recovery of train under fire services. So that would allow us for our headquarters, residential training, including support functions, laundry, kitchen and faith room, 16 bedrooms, 1 accessible room, 2 classrooms, and 1 social room, including all of our instant command suite as well. So it would incorporate pretty much all of everything we train on here, and then explain currently we move into here. That gives us the per year increase against our current cost if we include fire control of 339,000. There are, it's important, sorry, let me cover option 4 first. We retain 7 part for non-residential training, HQ and fire control. That removes the option for us to have the residential part here for cost recovery. When I talk about cost recovery, it would be a full cost recovery. So if we were training other services here, that cost recovery base would be on what it costs us to come in for that period of time. If we were to move into an option of looking at profit, that brings with it all sorts of other difficulties of opening a training and all, which looks like quite difficult and has actually proved to be quite unsuccessful on fire services. Option 4 would give us a per year increase with current costs, against current costs of 588,000. It is important to point out that all of these options come with additional capital costs. It doesn't. These are purely for the point of running this place for the purposes that I've mentioned. We have additional costs there's all sorts of IT costs and moving of staff, moving the physical logistics, moving headquarters to here. The intention for fire control would be that it would be something that would be looked at after. It wouldn't happen at the same time as 2028. That would be phase 2, to look at the accommodation for control and the costs of moving them here. So the report is making a recommendation to adopt option 3, retain 7 part for residential training headquarters with option of adding fire control room. It is reasoned that 7 part has sufficient capacity to incorporate the services training requirements, making full use of the already established key installations of the fire behaviour training facility, multiple training buildings, road traffic collision repair, fire applied house, internal and external classrooms, all the ablutions, changing of accommodation, catering facilities, breathing apparatus, set servicing, storage, first aid room, gym space and offices. In addition, the site could have parts converted to accommodate the same level of space currently occupied at police and fire headquarters. The relocation of headquarters would ensure a long-term venue free of dependence on other organisations. Vitally, this will allow us to our own staff, and this feeds into our culture piece. I think we're currently at headquarters where the large majority of our staff are unable to access due to the police clearance issue, which I think is a cultural issue for us. So it opens the doors to our own staff, our training, all of our staff, our operational staff will come here for their training, some of our corporate staff will be placed here, which then only builds those bridges between corporate staff and operational staff. And then following on from that, we look at the fire control review as well, which will bring us all together under one family roof. So the recommendation, as stated, as I said, is for, is asking the committee to approve recommendation 3 and to agree for the Chief Fire Officer and Statutory Finance Officer to allocate funds associated with delivery of this option during the next medium-term financial planning process. I'm happy to take any questions or give more detail if it's required.
Can I just briefly add that you will notice there is a very long legal section in this paper which I've drafted for you because there are legal complications associated with the end of the PFI. So if you have any questions on that, I will do my best to answer those, but there is quite a complex legal situation connected to all of this.
Yeah, and just to thank Rich for simplifying a very detailed and complex report. So obviously what I would say to members that there are a lot of known knowns here, but there are a lot of known unknowns. So obviously we have to judge, our decisions on today, not necessarily what might happen in the future. But if so, questions. I think Councillor Eddie's got a question. Councillor Moss, Councillor May.
I was just commenting the chairman. Certainly the chairman on Avon class transmogrified himself into a former US Defence Secretary. Seriously, Richard, thank you for twice seeking to make me comprehensive and more comprehensive. What I couldn't quite work out with on the words here, if members are minded to go with the officers for option 2, what functions currently undertaken here would not be able to be?
Sorry, to clarify. What training we currently provide would we not be able to do? None. We would continue all the training that we currently. If we go option 3, it would only enhance the training that's provided here. Because some of our training at the moment, because it's shared with other services, we have to deliver that Higgs gate to a satellite training venue, if you like. All of that would come here. So it really would bring. It would certainly promote a lot more. Made it a lot more cohesive, I think, because we'd all be here, and a lot of all our operational crews come and have their training would be here with us, even into as far as in the canteen, having lunch together. I think that's really important because actually our crews and our operational crews quite value seeing their senior leadership, all senior leadership team. That increase that a lot more here. So in short, the training we provide here will only be enhanced.
Thank you for that. That's really reassuring. I don't know whether to ask Amanda or you a second question. Obviously, the timeline until the end of the PFI contract is really short. Are we seeking to actually extend that for a period of we're able to or not?
No, the end of the PFI is set in stone. There's a contract with that date. There are breakpoints on our lease for the headquarters, which I've set out. I think that's 7.14, subparagraph B. So we can comply with those timelines, and that's why the planning for this started a while ago, because actually the last 4 years is a very short time, isn't it, to achieve all of this. There's been a lot of detail both. So I think at one point in the paper it says there's additional information available on request. So if you look on page 94. So what we haven't done, members, is overload you with too much information. There's a lot of floor plans and other documents which have already been worked on, but we haven't flooded you with all of that. So I think that the planning's at quite a progressed stage.
Councillor Eddie, do you want to follow up? Okay, so then we're going to Councillor Moss, May, and then Mellon.
Thanks very much. Have to go with option 3. Never move unless you're really forced to, or there's a very good reason to. And it would be an unusual cost-benefit analysis that said there was a good reason to move. But my question would be about the extension of lease. I'm looking at option 1. the dilapidation seems extremely high for if it was returning the site to Bristol City Council. So will option 3 be an extension to the existing lease on the current terms, or is there a possible to revisit the dilapidation conditions at the end of the 25-year lease? That's the first question. And the second was, totally agree with the reasons for having training all on one site, but will the move from Hicksgate have a knock-on travel time and cost? Will it have an increase to the potential revenue budget because of travel time and travel costs?
I would suggest not only because obviously whilst we do some training at Hicksgate, we have crews from all over the service have struggled with Hicksgate, so some will be closer for here, others may be a bit further away, but I think that the difference will be very minimal, really.
Hicksgate only provides us with a limited amount of training provision for certain elements of core competencies. So a lot of those facilities are based for the station itself. Think of our induction day, you'll saw some of the facilities there. We have a hot fire training facility at Hicksgate, which is probably the most popular to use for different crews to visit Hicksgate for. And there's a small sort of lecture room there as well for additional training provision, if you like. The majority of our capability for training sits in this building. And I think there were two separate issues in terms of the lease and also the dilapidation. So I'll let Patrick cover the dilapidation and not what the contract covers here, which might reassure you, and then there's obviously the aspect of the lease to the ground.
Yes, so I'll hopefully cover both under one sort of response. So in our discussions with Bristol City Council so far regarding the lease, the situation isn't quite as simple as normal. So because we're part of a PFI here, the PFI are the owners of the current lease. So we're currently in complex discussions with the council around how we actually start to negotiate the lease when we're not currently the party to the existing lease. On the 31st of March 2028, under the PFI agreement, we have the option to assimilate that lease to ourselves. So on that day, we then become the lease owner. They're all going back to the people I'm currently trying to coordinate with. They're going back to seek legal advice on how we start those negotiations earlier, so that we don't hit that 31st of March date, try and have a negotiation on day one and go from there. On the dilapidation side of things, we can look at that as part of the renegotiation of the next lease as to whether we can do anything different. I think the high cost here is related to the amount of infrastructure that's been installed on this site to make it into a real fire training venue. There's a lot of varied services and technical infrastructure that surrounds mainly the training buildings out the back. So I think what's been taken into account on the estimate that's been put together on the dilapidation side of things is excavations, digging all those services out and returning it to a sort of flat piece of good ground.
Council, I think just to kind of put some clarity onto that, when we talk about the lease, it's a lease for the land, not the building. So they're two separate. The building is slightly separate. So if we were to take the site on, we will take the building on as owners of this building, but the lease agreement is for the land that it sits on, because the building itself is currently part of the PFI. In essence, our PFI provider, our commercial provider, owns the assets here as it stands at the moment, and we lease it from that PFI, to want of a better word. But at the end of the contract, we have the option, if option 3 is approved, we will then take ownership of the assets, and the challenge is making sure that we secure a long-term lease on the land itself. We don't want any confusion between the two.
Yes, understood.
In relation to this site and the building, there have been condition reports done already in terms of, because you have condition surveys done, because they have obligations, the contract provider, to keep the building up to a certain standard right until the end date. They can't take that off. So what we're doing is we're already planning to make sure we have all the essential maintenance and improvements done before the end of the PFI. So the building itself should be in the best possible condition at the date of handover. I don't know if that helps.
Okay, any follow-up, Councillor Moss?
No, that's fine.
Councillor May?
Come back in 25
Likewise, I'm going to support the recommendation, but can I just, one or two queries. Are there any operational advantages of us being based with police at Portishead? I can judge by your smile.
I think the operational advantages are more around relationships that you build. I've been in the same building if you have a significant instance take place. But now that obviously we use obviously remote joining of meetings, so if you have a strategic coordination group, often that can be facilitated remotely through IT facilities or actually on the site. But that wouldn't affect the working relationship if we weren't on that site itself. There are, obviously you see each other on a day-to-day basis, so you build that familiarity and I guess relationships from that perspective. But from an operational perspective, it shouldn't make a huge amount of difference given that the change in technology.
Okay, thank you. The second question I wanted to ask is a follow-up really for Councillor Moss's query. We've obviously got 90 staff at Portishead. Are we going to cover their travelling costs as well? Because if they've been located around Portishead, there could be quite significant problems because getting from Portishead to here, I can imagine it would be quite difficult.
Yes, the difficulty of this site is not on a public transport route, so you have to have transport.
We stay on bus route.
Oh, there you go, sorry.
Just very recently, bus on Thursday.
Well, that's new to me. So there would be some arrangements and employment rights that we'd have to consider in respect to a relocation. And of course, we'd already gone through that journey when we moved from our old headquarters in central Bristol to Portishead. So we've got a model already, but there will be another cost, albeit a fixed term cost, in terms of any travel cost for our staff for relocation.
2 years. Yeah. The next one I had was, is the fire control centre up at, in Bath? Because there's a terrific amount of technology involved with that. I mean, is that actually realistic that you could at some stage in the future transfer it here? Or
again, there is a cost associated with transferring the IT and the IT connectivity. Part of the tendering, what we're going through the mobiliser system, we currently have 2 sites that we operate our fire control from. So we have our primary site and a fallback site. And the mobilising system hardware is on premises, so we maintain that ourselves. And then obviously we use the airwaves for other connectivity into the World Wide Web from the internet perspective. We are moving to specifications to move more to a cloud-based system. So moving to a cloud basis for mobilising helps in relation to transferable from one site to another. Whereas if the current site would go down, you could perhaps access our mobile system via a laptop from anywhere. What it would be though is the cost of the hardware for moving from one site to another, and of course the relocation of staff as well. But undoubtedly there is a cost associated with that, and we have to look at the connectivity into this area as well.
So in terms of this report, that would come back at a later stage to the Policy Resources Committee rather than we're just saying yes, go ahead and do it.
That's correct, Jay. So phase 2, and obviously as soon as the costs become more and more known, we will bring regular updates back to this committee anyway.
So my next, I'm sorry, I've got lots of questions. The next one was around the lease. If it's a 25-year lease with Bristol, will there be break clauses within that where they could, in actual fact, change the lease terms?
That's all going to be subject to negotiation. We can't tell you that at the moment. I mean, obviously, Patrick's lots of experience and knowledge of these things. I think we've got to trust him to negotiate. Do you want to add to that, Patrick?
What you said's right, really. It is all kind of subject to negotiation. It wouldn't be unusual to have break clauses in there in favour of each party, typically more in favour of ourselves serving a shorter period of notice than a landlord serving a longer period of notice on us. But I would expect it as a typical feature of a lease to have those
Bristol's in the plan.
And it's what condition at the end?
Yes,
Yeah.
which again is up for negotiation. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
So will we see that at some stage? Chair?
Yes, we can bring that back to you. I mean, obviously, you have to, as a committee, because of our scheme of delegation, when figures get to a certain level, they always come to you anyway. So, but yes, I would expect if we progress to the second phase of option 3, then you will get an update paper at that stage for approval.
I think, just generally speaking, Chair, I think the fact that we're putting it all together is really incredibly sensible. So I'll be supporting that when you vote.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to what I said at the beginning, that there are things that we know right now,
Yeah.
that in terms of exploring this option and progressing it and allowing the officers to go on and, for us to allocate the funds to allow the officers to progress this. And then it will eventually come back in some form or manner once we hit a certain spending threshold. We will have oversight, but obviously that's phase 2, that's a separate discussion, that's a separate meeting, it's something that we're happy to approach at the time. Tom, did you still have your question? I know it's been so long now, I don't know if you can remember it or not, but...
I do, but it has changed. Back to this, Lee, I'm slightly sort of amused by the comment whether you can or can't negotiate with the council, and hopefully there's a simple way sort of through that, because that would be madness to leave it until 2028 to start to try and sort that out. I think what I'm conscious of is I will also be supporting recommendation 3. I'm just conscious there's a risk at the moment in there that you only then hit 10 years if we don't get that lease extension. So I think it would be good to be updated on that, and I mean, I presume the PFI can just give permission for you to have negotiations if there's a need for that permission under the current lease.
That's what we're currently exploring. The positive news is that the conversation we've had so far is that for our own security and for Bristol City Council security, they are very keen to make sure that we have that lease agreed as soon as possible. As far as they're aware, there are no other plans for this site that would be anything different than what it is currently. For their own rental income security, they have got a vested interest to make sure that we negotiate that as soon as possible and have it agreed.
And then just to go to the next question, I assume the Bristol City Council members are fine to vote on this item.
Yes, I think because Bristol City Council have already indicated they're happy for us to go ahead with this plan, I don't see any conflict.
Okay, Councillor Eddie's just...
Again, like other members, it does seem to me it's worthwhile pursuing as the best option, option 3. Just occurred to me, I remarked to the receptionist on the way in, every time I came here, parking had been at a premium, and we're thinking of transferring 90 people from Portishead. Are there any plans to, I don't know, allow additional parking?
Rich?
Yeah, we do have the option of using some of the RTC area outside here, but part of the exploration work will be that there is a piece of land next to this site, which they've indicated may well be available for a car park area. It will all be part of the exploration for that. Very conscious that parking is an issue.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time that we've discussed this quite a lot, and we've had all the information given to us. So I'm going to move to the recommendation. Obviously, there are a series of recommendations, but I'd like to suggest that we approve the officer recommendation, which is option 3, and agree with the Chief Fire Officer and the Statutory Finance Officer to allocate funds associated with the delivery of this option during the next medium-term financial planning process. So, can I have a seconder? Councillor Eddy? Okay, so let's go to the vote. Any votes against? Any abstentions? Votes for? That's everyone. Thank you. Okay, so that takes us to item 13, which is the date of the next meeting, which is Tuesday, the 1st of October 2024 at 10:30, which is in Stoke Village Hall in North Somerset. So put that in your diary. And then item 14, which is the exclusion of the press and the public. So I have to read this out, unfortunately. To resolve that the public be excluded from the meeting during the following items of business on the grounds that they contain exempt information pursuant to section 12A, Part 1 of Local Government Act 1972, and in accordance with section 12A, Part 2, paragraph 10 of the Liberal Government Act 1972, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information.
Can you propose that?
I'll propose that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Eddy. Any votes against? Any abstentions? Votes for. Thank you.